On Sunday morning, May 21st of this year, Kettering College and Kettering Medical Center will be among many participants in a very exciting full-scale exercise called Dawn of a New Day. This is the player pre-brief for that exercise. I'm David Gershner, and I'll be giving you information about what to expect as the exercise progresses. We'll cover in this presentation exercise parameters, the objectives, the participants, your rules of conduct, the issues with a full-scale exercise versus a functional exercise, and there will be components of each in this exercise. Communications, both who you'll be communicating with and how you'll do so, suspending or terminating the exercise if needed, and a discussion about the player hot wash, the short debrief right after the exercise. Much of this exercise is based on the events that took place in Orlando at the Pulse nightclub shooting, and Orlando Health has been very forthcoming and willing to share their lessons learned after that incident. But this also includes lessons learned from numerous other incidents. The purpose of this pre-brief is to cover any concerns you might have, talk about individual roles and responsibilities, and certainly to discuss safety. The scope of the exercise, as I said, will be both a full-scale exercise and a functional exercise, and I'll explain the difference as we go along. The mission area is response. We have participation from state, county, and local agencies. The duration will be approximately 4 hours, although that will differ depending on the agency. And the locations will be at Kettering College and Kettering Medical Center. Some important concerns to keep in mind, and first and foremost, the exercise is as real as you make it. Try to have a sense of urgency and respond as you would to the greatest degree feasible if this were a real event. This is a very large-scale exercise. Some things have to be simulated, and I'll talk more about that. But as much as you can, do what you would do. Use appropriate communications, and don't forget about redundant communications. Actually call people and use all players. Vary your response as needed according to the needs of the incident. Let's discuss the capabilities and objectives very briefly. These have been chosen by the exercise planning team. They include coordination of resources and emergency operations, communications and sharing of information, medical capabilities and medical surge, and of course, responder safety and health. We'll also be looking at emergency public safety and security and on-scene security and protection. We'll cover emergency triage and pre-hospital treatment, as well as medical services and medical surge, as I mentioned, and community preparedness and participation so that the community has greater resilience. Finally, we'll be considering the effectiveness of the on-site incident management and operational coordination throughout all exercise players. The parameters of the exercise. There are multiple organizations participating, and I'll show you who those are. There will be a lead-in scenario that I'll show you in just a moment. The date itself of the exercise itself is Sunday the 21st. Some aspects of the exercise will start as early as 8 a.m. We expect the exercise to finish around noon. It will certainly finish before 1 p.m. The actual player for Kettering Medical Center will start at 10 a.m. and then at the index, when the exercise concludes, we'll have a very short hot wash to discuss what you learned and how it went. As I said, there will be a lead-in. Some people in the hospital and in other agencies will receive a simulated Joint Intelligence Bulletin. JIBs, Joint Intelligence Bulletins, are put out by agencies such as the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI and the National Counterterrorism Center. This will be a simulated JIB that shows that there are risks that could happen in our area involving terrorism. Participants who are not already on site because they're working should try to be on location about half an hour prior to the exercise. Be aware that the hospital will be receiving multiple patients. EMS will be using exercise triage tags, and I'll show you those that will be provided for the exercise. And the hospital will actually be using communications tools such as OTRAC, and you'll need to create an OTRAC incident for this occurrence. You'll need to update the Gadaha SurgeNet MCI page as you go through the exercise. This is the SurgeNet MCI page. As I said, you should update the capabilities of Kettering Medical Center and what you can receive and what you have received as the incident goes on. Player rules of conduct. Of course, the most important concern, as always, is safety. At the college, there will be a safety officer who will conduct a weapons check, and other than training weapons, no weapons of any kind are allowed in the college exercise area. Whether they're firearms, electrical weapons, knives, there will be no weapons permitted in the college exercise area. Approved training weapons for this exercise include simunitions, firearms, and inert blue guns as approved by the safety officer. Each participant at the college exercise area will be searched. We will use appropriate standoff when using the simunitions and appropriate safety gear because simunitions can cause injuries. Only instructors will load or unload simunitions weapons. There will certainly be no horseplay. We'll follow all the instructions of the safety officers, and if there's a ceasefire ordered, it will immediately end that scenario. This exercise will be conducted in a no-fault learning environment. We expect people to try things out and make some mistakes. That's what an exercise is about. It's an opportunity to learn. Please accept that the scenario is plausible. One of the most common phrases is, don't fight the exercise. Don't argue that it wouldn't happen this way. The question is, what would you do if it did happen this way? Only those departments that are listed in the player directory can be contacted during the exercise, and we'll show you those. There will be controllers and evaluators who can give you designated information. And if you need additional information or need to contact an agency that's not participating in the exercise, we'll have a simulation cell, nicknamed a sim cell, that you can contact. You should respond using the plans, policies, processes, and procedures that you've been trained on and that your hospital or agency has, as well as using your own best judgment. But respond the best you can as if this were an actual event. Participating agencies, particularly the hospital, may have to balance play with real-world emergencies. We understand that. Obviously, real-world emergencies take priority. There is no hidden agenda. There are no trick questions. We simply want you to go through this and do it as realistically as you can. There will be some simulation. Some of that simulation will be quite realistic as we go through, and you're going to see the sights and sounds that actually occur in terrorist incidents, such as some of those depicted here that include the Paris incident and the Mumbai incident. You will see police, fire, and EMS responding in protective equipment. patients will actually be brought to the hospital using standard procedures. As I said, we have elements of this that are a full-scale exercise and elements that are a functional exercise. For the most part, most areas are going to feel like a full-blown, full-scale exercise where things actually get done, things actually get moved. So what's a functional exercise? A functional exercise is an exercise where you do everything up to the point of actually moving people and moving equipment. So, for example, in this exercise, we'll move patients. That's the full-scale aspect. But you might call someone and ask if they could respond if this was a real event, but not actually have them come in. That's the functional exercise part. You've called, you've made the phone call, but you haven't asked for an actual response. Again and again, respond to this as if it were real. You're going to send patients from the college to the emergency department. We're going to send patients from the emergency department to imaging. We're going to send patients up to the ORs. You're going to actually make phone calls. Don't simulate them. If you think you need to call somebody, or if you need to request something, then make a call. You use the player directory to determine who you can call, but you can ask for anything and anyone simply by calling the sim cell. Anyone who's not playing, you call the sim cell. So for example, if you needed Greater Dayton Area Hospital Association or GDAHA, they're not a player in this exercise, you would call the sim cell and ask them. If you're not sure about whether you should do something as if it's functional or full scale, ask your supervisor, ask one of the exercise controllers who will be identified and will be in every area, or call the sim cell and ask them. All communication should begin and end with the statement, "This is an exercise message." We'll be sending out a Regional Hospital Notification System message, or RHNS. It has to say this is an exercise message. We don't want anyone receiving that and thinking there's a real terrorist event. Normally, this is an exercise message is used with electronic communications. We're going to add using that even with face-to-face once we're inside the hospital. That won't be done as much at the college, but once patients are brought to the hospital, to avoid confusion and to avoid concerns by patients and visitors, as much as you can, state this is an exercise message as you provide information or gather information from other players. You're going to get message injects. You'll be told to do things or told something has happened and you need to respond to it. And those may come from the controllers. They may come from your victims. They may come from emails or by phone. Use the player directory to decide who you can call, but do use communications tools such as RHNS, the Regional Hospital Notification System, SurgeNet, OTRAC, WENS, and the Mass Casualty Incident or MCI radio talk group. EMS will use that to call the emergency department. We'll be looking at how effectively command works. So follow ICS or follow inside the hospital the HICS structure. Don't get locked into one thing. Avoid tunnel vision. Try to be proactive as much as you can. You should be leaning forward. This will be a big incident, and communicate all you can. There will be 2 reference materials provided, and we'll have multiple copies of those distributed ahead of time. One is the X plan, or simply the exercise plan. It's fairly lengthy. We'll give a shorter version of that called a player guide. So the scenario for this exercise is we have the lead-in that says there are terrorists that are interested in hitting colleges in the Midwest, including in Ohio. We have a man who enters Kettering College and starts shooting. He has an IED that explodes. There are numerous victims. There will be fatalities, and those victims are going to be brought to the hospital emergency department. We have law enforcement playing, and of course they would be the first of the first responders on the scene, and their primary goal is to locate and stop the perpetrators. They'll also be participating with EMS in the unified command structure. Law enforcement has to be concerned not only about command, but about traffic control, site and perimeter security, protection for other responders, some of whom are actually going into the warm zones of this incident, and participating with communications. We will have multiple law enforcement agencies, including Kettering Hospital Security, Kettering Police Department, Ohio State Highway Patrol, and others. Fire and EMS will be playing. We'll have multiple fire and EMS agencies who will be part of this and will participate in the command structure with law enforcement and the developing unified command. We'll have the rescue task force that goes into warm zones during active shooter incidents to provide triage and limited patient care, limited to LSIs or life-saving interventions. And of course, they'll play in the communications and the interoperability plan as well. Fire and EMS normally would distribute patients around the region. The transport officer will simulate destinations elsewhere. But since only Kettering Medical Center is playing in this exercise, all of the patients from this incident are going to go to KMC. Now please note that in real life, we would distribute these patients very thoroughly around the region, and in fact, we would expect that Kettering Medical Center, being so close to the incident site, is simply going to be overwhelmed with everybody who can walk, crawl, or be dragged over to your location. EMS would take our patients elsewhere. We would hardly bring a single patient to Kettering Medical Center. But the request has been that we really tax your trauma program. And so you're going to receive all of the trauma patients from this incident. Fire and EMS agencies can activate the regional hospital notification system, are expected to triage patients, and are expected to transport patients and tag those with exercise triage tags that we'll provide at the time of the exercise. EMS throughout our region has triage ribbon kits that we use for the initial triage because they're fast and they're easy. The primary indicator of the patient's triage category is the ribbon. If the patient's condition changes, we can change the ribbon, but once a tag is attached, we keep the same tag. There are multiple versions of our triage tags. The most expensive version are the live tags. These are white. They're on synthetic paper that you can write on in rainy conditions, for example. We keep those tags only for real-world use, actual mass casualty incidents. For exercises like this, we use the orange tag that you see on the right, and this is our exercise tag. And as you can see, it is, other than the color and the watermark, identical to the live, the real white triage tag. Like real triage tags, the exercise tags have actual barcodes, and each tag has a different number, and those are scannable, and you can use those tags to scan the information in to OTRAC, Epic, and other systems. Kettering Medical Center is going to participate with a command structure. You'll actually be triaging the patients, and you'll get some patients who have been pre-triaged by EMS. You're also going to get some patients who will simply walk in, who get there ahead of EMS and arrive at your hospital. Kettering should actually plan to treat patients as much as possible, bandage wounds, apply tourniquets, loosely, please, but apply tourniquets. Do what you need to do. You are going to receive moulaged actors, students who are playing victims and who will appear to have fairly realistic injuries. Please do not perform any actual invasive procedures such as IVs or radiological examinations on the actors. And recognize that there may also be actors who are playing other roles like family members, press, and others. And we will actually have press on site as well, not just actors, but real media. Again, a reminder, you've got live patients in the hospital. As much as you can, try to remember to say this is an exercise message when you say something like, this victim needs a tourniquet. So, who are the participants who are playing in this exercise? We have players, we have controllers and evaluators, we have actors, we have observers, and we have the simulation cell. Most of the people watching this are going to be players, and you're actively involved and you'll respond. Our controllers and our evaluators will help move the situation along. They'll be identified with either vests or badges, and they will evaluate the response so that we can learn from the overall scenario. The actors are volunteers who will be role-playing patients and other roles. We will also have some outside observers, again, as I mentioned before, including media. And finally, the simulation cell that can play any non-playing entity. So if for some reason you decide that you need Ohio Emergency Management Agency, you can call the simulation cell, say, I need Ohio EMA, and they will tell you what they can do for you. They may also inject information or respond to other requests. Organizations that are participating obviously include Kettering College and Kettering Medical Center. And much of Kettering Medical Center will be involved in this exercise. The emergency department, the operating room, radiology, respiratory, laboratory, pharmacy, anesthesia, the blood bank, ICU and the PACU, environmental services, plant engineering, security, HICS, trauma administration, and WENS will all actually participate in this exercise. We have, as I mentioned before, multiple police and fire agencies that are playing. Kettering Police Department, Kettering Fire Department, Dayton Fire Department, Vandalia Fire Department, Brookville Fire Department, Franklin Fire Department, and others will all be on scene. Montgomery County Regional Dispatch Center, who puts out the regional hospital notification system messages, will be a participant to that degree. And again, please remember, when you call 333 USAR and say, please put out a regional hospital notification system message, the most important part of that message is the phrase, this is an exercise. Ohio Homeland Security will be on hand as observers to watch the exercise, and the Regional MMRS Rescue Task Force will be active participants. We have a communications plan that will be used by public safety and to a degree the hospital. Operation 68 and Operation 63 will be used by EMS. 68 will be the primary talk group for the incident. Operation 63 will be used as the tactical talk group for the rescue task force. Law enforcement will be using LECOM 1, or if that's busy that day, we'll move to LECOM 2 or some other number, and we'll notify all law enforcement officers of that at the time. And finally, the MCI radio talk group that we established specifically for mass casualty incidents will be used for communications between EMS at the scene and your hospital emergency room. All communications begin and end, ideally, with "this is an exercise" message. Whether you're calling on the phone, whether you're on the radio, whether you send an email, if you send a fax, they all need to say "this is an exercise" message. And as we've said before, inside the hospital, to avoid confusion and even fear from others who might hear, try to say "this is an exercise" message during face-to-face conversations. Communications with visitors, staff, and patients are going to be critically important. People are going to hear things that will be frightening. People are going to see things that will be scary. You need to communicate with the people who come in and have concerns. Now, there will be signage put up around the hospital and actually outside the hospital saying there's an exercise going on. There will be announcements, but the most important thing is reassuring people with the explanations that you can provide. So explain the sights and sound and reassure people that it's nothing but a training exercise, but it's an important one because being prepared is crucial. Recognize that you may hear what sounds like very realistic gunshots. You may hear an explosion. I promise you, nothing's going to happen that looks like this picture, but you may hear a muffled explosion, and your patients may hear it and wonder what's going on, and you can simply tell them it's all part of the exercise. Please remember to reassure all that you can and all that you need to. We will have the Kettering Health Network media liaison personnel on site. They will accompany media. No media should be anywhere on hospital property or college property unless they're accompanied by the media liaison officers. Suspending or terminating the exercise, hopefully we don't need to do that, but things can happen. We've said over and over, use the phrase "this is an exercise" message. If you have a problem and things need to stop, then the message you send should include the phrase "real world emergency." If we see that, if we hear that, we'll ask what's going on and determine what needs to be done at that point. The nearest controller evaluator needs to be told that. They'll forward the information to the senior controller and the sim cell, and we'll decide if the exercise needs to stop or if we can simply stop play in one particular area. But if anything significant is happening, use the phrase "real world emergency." Ask for what you need and we'll get you the help you want. At the end of the exercise, we have a player hot wash. And the hot wash is simply a discussion between the controllers and evaluators and the players. This happens right after End-X. We ask what went well, and most importantly, we want to hear your immediate thoughts about what needs improvement. How can we make this better so that when a real mass casualty incident, whether from a car crash or a terrorist incident, happens, we're ready to respond as effectively as possible. The controllers and evaluators will document your discussion on the group feedback form, and we'll also ask each of you to fill out a feedback form. Now, I recognize most of you are not hearing this in person, so if you've got questions, please feel free to email me at any time. My email is david.gerstner, Gerstner, at Dayton, Ohio, spelled as if it were all one word, .gov. David.Gerstner at DaytonOhio.gov. send me an email and I'll be glad to get you more information on whatever you need. Thank you very much for listening. More than that, thank you for participating. These exercises truly make a difference in our ability to respond. And once the exercise is over, please complete the evaluation forms. I promise you, every single form will be read and we'll pay attention to them. Thank you again. I hope you have a great day, and I hope you really enjoy the exercise.